Hey, what's up YouTube? Welcome back. Hopefully you guys are doing good. Make sure you smash the like button, and today we have a quick real estate Q&A. So somebody had reached out and asked a simple question. So I feel like we should just dive in, read the question, and hopefully I can put a personal touch to what I did to answer this question for myself. So starting off, his name is Michael Sharp 1555. About 11 days ago, he reached out to me and he asked this question on one of my previous videos. I'll link it somewhere up here, about preparing one of my properties for a Section 8 tenant. His question reads as follows. Hey, what's up, Raheem? Happy New Year's. Could you make a video about the acquisition of your properties, like running the numbers, vetting tenants, making decisions on what neighborhoods to invest in, and, just keep the videos coming, bro. Good job. So, hey, Mike, I appreciate the comment. Hopefully this video is of use. So let's dive straight into it. I'm no way, shape, or form like some big investor. I just got off into real estate during this pandemic. I purchased my first property in 2020. And it honestly, it took me some time to get to that point. My journey really started in 2017. 2017, I started to really feel the woes of life. And I couldn't keep renting. So I figured I might as well spice some stuff up. Hop off into real estate. Now this is how I did it. 2017, I reached out to a mortgage broker. They ran my numbers, saw how long I was at my job, and they gave me the advice of staying at my job for 2 years. Got pre-approved for a certain number, saved up some money. Around 2020, July 31st exact, I closed on my first property. Went out, found a real estate agent. I'm going to just put you in the mind frame of where I was at 2020, Pandemic just happened, interest rates were little to nothing. Everybody could get a home for like little qualifications, little to nothing. I was going to utilize a loan, which was a FHA loan. This loan is a owner-occupied loan, which means I have to stay there. So they'll let you enter the property at a very low down payment as long as you live there. So this is how I ran the numbers for my first property. My mortgage broker gave me a sheet that pretty much told me estimated mortgage for each property that I was going to look for on my first day of looking at properties. The first property I stepped foot in, I looked at my list and I saw that this property was going to cost me about $1,000 a month if I move forwards with it. So, I'm looking through it, pretty much liked it, We could talk about the neighborhood next, we could talk about future tenants next. But I talked to my agent and she said, oh, this property already has a tenant in it. I said, okay, well, can you ask the seller team, does the tenant pay? Can we get some type of history of her information, like her paying? And it's not per se legal to show bank statements and things like that, but they said, oh, she's been paying ever since she moved in April the year prior. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'll take that for what it is. That property is going to cost me about $1,000 a month to own it. And the tenant upstairs paid about $950 a month. So I'm going to tell you this, and this isn't necessarily say all be all. This isn't the only formula that a investor can use, but this is a formula that I use. It's called the 1% rule. You can go type this in on Google to get a thorough definition of it, but I'm going to give you a basic gist of it, right? The 1% rule is used with real estate to look at a property to see if it even makes sense. If you should even continue to have a conversation about the property. This is going to be a rough example, so hopefully you guys keep up. If there's a single family house for $100,000, and yes, I live in the Midwest, some properties are $100,000. So 1 unit property, $100,000. The 1% rule means you should collect every single month 1% of the purchase price. So a single family house for $100,000, how much should you collect each month? At least $1,000. That will make the conversation of running the numbers for this property even feasible. If something doesn't meet the 1% rule, keep looking at it for different reasons, and we could talk about that in a different video. But for the most part, if it doesn't cash flow, most investors don't really care about it. And that's like a huge asterisk mark, because there's going to be a lot of people that's going to still look at properties that don't cash flow. But we could talk about that different day, different video if you guys want. So that was my first property. That was just the quick numbers that I ran while I was in the living room. And I was like, this makes sense. I could live in a 2-bedroom for about $50 a month. So I put the offer in. You didn't ask this question, but I want to just give you even more information. I had applied for grants. I had the seller carry some closing costs. I had received 2 stimulus checks 2020. I don't know if you guys remember with those stimulus checks. What did you do with your stimulus check? That's what I did with mine. Collected those checks, closed on the 31st of July. My closing costs were $4,000, $4,200. So 2 stimulus checks, closed on the 31st of July. The next day was the 1st. I went and collected rent. The property was basically free. So that's how I ran my numbers. That's why I pulled the trigger on my property. A few more questions that you asked. I hope I'm not going too far out of order with this, but you said, like vetting tenants. First property, I got really lucky. My first tenant, I inherited her. I asked for her prior history. I got word of mouth. And you really shouldn't go for that, but that's all I had, and the property made sense. That's my first property. To answer this question truthfully, I would really recommend that you follow the legislation for your state. Each state is different. Some states are tenant friendly, some states are landlord friendly. Follow your state. I live in Illinois. It's a very tenant friendly state, so this is what I would recommend for a person who lives in a state like mine. Follow rules. Don't be prejudiced, don't discriminate, right? Starting out the gate. I believe that a tenant should make 2.5 times the rent. That's just to be safe. You don't want to make just enough to pay the rent and not be able to afford noodles, not be able to afford gas for your car, not being able to afford electric for your unit that you're staying in. You want to have some money for rent and your utilities, food, whatever else you need money for, right? So 2.5 times the rent. That's what I think is adjustable. Some other people say 3 times. Depending on where you live at, the numbers can change. I think on the West Coast, they're a little more lenient. They might go down to 2 times. Credit score. I like for the tenant to be around the 650. You can choose whatever you want for your property. Make sure you follow rules for your state. I say 650. And credit score really just dictates how well somebody pays stuff back, how long their history is. It shows the debt to income ratio, and really when you talk about it, it can sound like you're being biased. But somebody who has over a 650, they have over a 650 for a reason. People who have under 650 are under 650 for a reason. I know it sounds like I'm being very judgmental, but it is what it is. This is something that I really started to implement, but ask for prior references from jobs. Ask from prior references from landlords. All of these things can be faked. Even W-2s can be faked. So you gotta be careful. Now, that's the tenant side. I can make another video talking about Section 8, pros and cons, market value, rent people, pros and cons. So, don't discriminate against Section 8, don't discriminate against market value, we can talk more about ethics on a different video. Because you asked a couple questions. I want to keep this rolling. Next is the neighborhood, right? I'm very fortunate. I was born and raised in the Midwest, so I can invest locally per se. If you live on the East Coast, West Coast, and you're starting out with real estate, it might be a little expensive to buy in your own backyard, so you might have to invest somewhere else. I chose local. I have a loan for owner-occupied, meaning that I have to stay there. So I chose local. I grew up in Lake County, so why didn't I choose Lake County, McHenry County, Page? I chose Cook County because Cook County's rents are high. Property tax is low in regards to Lake County, Cook County, McHenry County, and the purchase price of properties and the expenses are low. So how much you can get paid versus that, there's a discrepancy, and that discrepancy is called cash flow. So that's why I chose the region that I chose. Now to dive a little bit further, why didn't I choose the north side of Chicago versus the south side of Chicago? Well, the prices of homes on the north side are so ridiculous that quite often they don't make sense. My first property, the purchase price was about $150K. Paired with my extremely low interest rates, my mortgage is about $1,000 a month. $1,000 a month for 2-unit property. Each unit market value rent is about $1,100 right now, 2023. Meets the 1% rules, it makes sense. The north side, you can't really find properties under like $500,000 that can pass FHA. So take that how you want, do what you want. So to dive into this question a little bit further, why did I choose the zip code 60617, 60621? My first property was purchased in 60621, which is technically in the greater Grand Crossing community if you were to look at Google Maps. But I chose this location because 1, it was close to the highway. 2, it was close to the train. 3, it was close to the bus stop. It was close to grocery stores, XYZ. Renters think a little bit differently, so whenever you buy rental properties, location, think about those type of things for them. You know, renters like transportation, they like easy access to certain things like that. People who buy homes, they want stuff to be a little bit further from stuff. So renters and home buyers, they psychologically, they think about stuff a little bit different. For both of my properties, it's on the south side of Chicago. So when it comes to safety, I make sure I drive past these properties several times before the actual closing day. And it just checked out. The block was pretty quiet. Now, property number 2 followed the same suit. Property number 2 was closer to 2 grocery stores. It was close to the metro line. It was close to bus stations. And once again, I'm gonna put an asterisk mark, like I'm on the south side. But that being said, I drove past the neighborhood. It was really quiet. Across the street from my property, a lot of elderly people who own their house. To the left of my property, a lot of people who own their house. So a lot of home ownership, a lot of old people. Chef kiss, love it. I really glossed through a lot of these questions because you asked a couple different questions in this video, Mike. But hopefully it just gave you a little tad bit of some things to think about. To calculate this video in a total, I would really encourage for you just to go out and educate yourself on a few different matters. So quick tip, Robert Kiyosaki, he writes a couple books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, 4 Income Quadrants. Once you read one of his books, you've pretty much read them all. But Robert Kiyosaki talks a lot about financial education. And the biggest thing that he talks about in one of his books titled Unfair Advantage is that the knowledge an investor has greatly dictates the success the investor will have. So investors are always dealing with risk, but the more you know about the subject matter, the less risky it can become. So just keep educating yourself, keep watching more videos. Hopefully this video was useful. Make sure you hit the like button, guys. Hopefully this video was helpful for somebody else. And if there's any topic in particular you want me to talk more about, just comment down below. We can talk about it more and just learn and grow together. Until next time.